Hello and welcome. In this video we will deploy a Laravel application on an Ubuntu server. We will be using Ubuntu 22.04 server, which is running inside of a virtual machine on my computer. And the application we will be deploying is a small context application built in Laravel 9 that we created in another video on this channel. So here I am SSH'd into my server, and one thing that I would mention is that I have forwarded port 9009 on my local machine to go to the default HTTP port, which is 80 on my guest. So if I go to localhost port 8009, it should go to the port 80 on the Ubuntu server. So right now it is not working because we don't have a web server running on the Ubuntu server. So let's fix that. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to run sudo apt update command. I'm going to enter my password. Alright, so now let's install the Apache server. So in order to do that, we run the command sudo apt install apache 2. And press enter to allow. So if we go to our browser and go to port 9009, okay, so now we get the Apache 2 default welcome page, and this means that our Apache server is installed. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to install PHP. So we'll do sudo apt install PHP, and once again we're going to press enter to allow. Okay, so PHP is installed, and we can check the version by doing -v flag. Okay, so since we're doing it on 22.04 Ubuntu server, so we get PHP 8.1.2, which is perfect for running a Laravel 9 application. Alright, so the next thing that we want to do, since we have installed Linux, so if you look at the LAMP stack, we have Linux because we're working in Ubuntu. We installed the Apache server, and we have installed PHP. So the one letter that is left from the LAMP stack is the M, which is for MySQL. So let's go ahead and install that. So in order to do that, we'll do sudo apt install mysql-server. Okay, and press enter to allow. So MySQL server is installed. Now what we need to do is we want to create a user, which is going to a database user that we are going to use to communicate, to allow our application to communicate with MySQL server. So in order to do that, we need to log into the MySQL shell, and here we are inside there, and we're going to create a user. So in order to do that, we need to run the following two commands. So the first one is going to create a user. We'll say create user, and here you can specify the username. I'm going to call it app user, and this part needs to stay fixed, which is localhost. Okay, and then we'll say identified with MySQL native password, and we'll say by, and inside of these quotes we're going to provide the password for this user. The app user that we created here, okay, is going to have this password. So I'm going to stay simple and provide password as password, right? Okay, now we're going to grant the privileges to this user so it can communicate to the databases running inside of our server. So we'll say star to app user. This is the same user that we created above, at localhost, and then we'll say with grant option and now we can just exit out of here. We've created the user. Okay, so now we're done with the MySQL part. The next thing that we want to do is install Composer, so we can pull in the dependencies for our Laravel application. So to do that, I'm going to create a downloads folder here. Let's say downloads, and let's go in there and bring in the Composer installer. So in order to do that, we'll do php-r and copy http get composer.org/installer. And say composer-setup.php. So this is going to copy the Composer installer and create a file in this folder called composer-setup.php. Okay, so we got the Composer setup file, and we're going to run this saying php composer-setup.php, and it's going to bring the Composer archive file. And if we do ls, so this is the Composer command line tool. So if we do php composer.phr, it works, right? So now what we want to do is we want to move it to our user local bin directory so we can use it globally. So we are also going to rename it, so we don't have to type composer.phr, we just need to type composer, right? So the sudo move composer.phr, and let's say usr local bin composer, and we're going to type our root password. And now if I just type composer, we get the Composer command line. Right, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to install some packages and some PHP extensions that we need for a Laravel application. So the first thing that I'm going to install is Git. Okay, and some of the Ubuntu Server installations come with Git pre-installed. The one that I'm using does not, so I'm going to install it. If you run this command and it's already installed, it's just going to tell you that it's already installed and that you don't need to install it again. Okay, so it's not going to create a problem if you run this command again. Okay, now that the Git is installed, I can just verify. Okay, so another extension that we need is sudo apt install unzip. Okay, so this is a package that is used by Composer when it is installing dependencies. If you don't have it, it gives you like a warning. So I like to install that. And next we want to install some extensions that are required by Laravel. So the first one is PHP zip, and I'm going to do this all in one command. So PHP mysql. So this gives you like the PDO classes that allow the PHP to communicate with your database. Let's say PHP-XML and PHP-Pro. So these are the application extensions that are required by Laravel, and it depends on your project. But if there are if you're using the PHP GD library, so you do PHP-GD, right? So since we're just using a very simple application, these are the extensions that we need. And by the way, if you don't know what kind of extensions your project needs, once you clone it, and we're going to get to that step, and I'm going to explain what happens if you don't have the extensions. Okay, so now that we have those installed, what we want to do is we want to go to the document root, right, and get it ready so we can clone our project there. So go to document root, which is at /var www.html. So this is where we have the index.html file that is being served here. Okay, so if we do ls, so we get this index.html, right, and this is the one that is being served here. All right, so let's remove that. Okay, so it's saying write protected regular file. Okay, and if you refresh now, it's going to give us a 404. I think it didn't work, right? So we need to do, because if we do ll, it shows you who the owner of this folder is, and it is the root group and the root user, right? So in order to remove this, we need to do sudo rm index.html, right? And it's going to remove that, and now we should get like the directory listing. Okay. So what we want to do is, since we want to be able to clone our project, and if need be, like pull the changes from our repository, so we need this folder to be writable by this user. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the owner of this this HTML folder and all of the subfolders this user. Alright, so in order to do that, we run the following command. So we'll do sudo chown -R, which is for recursive, and we'll say mubashir : okay, so this is the user group and this is the user, which is both the same. And let's say dot. Now if you're doing this in an actual an EC2 instance or a DigitalOcean droplet, you will have a username here. Okay, so you are going to type that twice here, separated by colon. So most of the time it is Ubuntu, the username is Ubuntu, right? So here I'm going to type this command, and it's going to change the owner of the HTML folder. Okay, so if I do ll now, you can see that the current folder, the owner has been changed. So this dot dot means that the directory above it, which is www, and it's fine, it can the root can say the owner of that, but this folder and everything inside will be owned by this user. So we can now create everything inside of here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to clone our project inside here. So in order to do that, I'm going to go to my GitHub repository for this, the application that we're going to be using. So I'm going to go to code, and I'm going to copy the HTTP. Right. So since we're just cloning it, and we are not going to be updating it, even if we are updating it, we can use GitHub access tokens. And but if we can also set up SSH, which is the recommended way to to work with GitHub, and to push and pull code. So I'm not going to be going into those details here, but I can create another video in which we set up how to set up an SSH key and add it to your GitHub account. So here is our document root. So it's a git clone, and I'm going to paste the URL, the GitHub URL for the repository. Okay, and now to do ls, we can see this app here, right? Okay, so now we do need to change some permissions in there for the log files in order to get it to work. But the first thing that we want to do is we want to install the dependencies. So we will do composer install. Alright, so now that the dependencies are installed, we should do ls to make sure that we have a vendor folder. Right, so what we can do now is go to the application, and I'm expecting it to fail. Okay, so I'm going to go to context app Laravel public, and don't worry, we're going to use like a domain, appropriate domain that is going to go to this application, but we're going to get to that later, and right now this is fine. Okay, so this is, we're getting an HTTP 500 error, right? So in order to see the error, we could create copy the example env file to .env, and if we vim.env, okay, so we don't have vim, so let's install that. Sudo app install vim. And like I said, there are some installations of the Ubuntu server that come pre-built with these packages like Git and Vim, but it doesn't matter. Like everything that we need for this tutorial, if it doesn't come with an installation, like I'm using the most basic installation, and I will show you how to install it. So now we are going to edit the .env file. Okay, so now its environment is local, and we should get like a decent error message now. Okay, so it's saying the streamer file laravel.log could not be opened in append mode. Alright, so now the problem is that, so I was expecting this error, right? So since we made, so if I do ll, so we made the owner of this HTML folder and every folder that it is going to contain this user. Okay, so when you run the application, it creates a log, right? So when a request comes in, or if you are logging something explicitly, it goes into this file called, if you go into our storage folder, storage logs, then we have a file here called laravel.log, right? And when the application is running, it is running inside of the web server, right, which is the Apache, and Apache has a user called www-data, and this user is what tries to write to this file, right? And what we need to do now is we need to make the owner of this storage folder this user. Okay, so when we needed to clone our code using this user, we change the owner of this folder to this user, to the HTML folder to this user, right? And now we need the same thing for this storage folder. So we're going to make the owner of this folder this user www-data, which comes with Apache, right? So I'm going to go out, and we're going to do the same thing. We'll do sudo chown -R www-data :www-data, and we want to do this for the storage folder, right? So if we do enter, alright, so now if we go and refresh, okay, so we get a different error, no application encryption key specified. So we can do PHP artisan key generate. Okay, so if we look at the cat, if we do env cat env, so here the application key has been generated. Okay, so now if we go back, we should see our home page. Okay, so that's good. So next thing that I want to do is I want to create the database and put the values inside of our env file. So in order to do that, we're going to use the same user. Let's say the user we created was @user, and the password will be password, the word password. Okay, so now we're inside of our MySQL shell, and we're going to just do create database, and I'm going to call this database sample @db, right? And let's just exit. Okay, so let's go into our env file. Okay, and we're going to make some changes here, and what we want to do is we want to change these values. Okay, so for the database we want to call it sample @db, and if you don't know how to use Vim, let me show you. So when you open a file, if you are in you can use the the arrow keys to go to where you want to make the change. Okay, so but if you type something, it's not going to work. Okay, it did work in this case. It shouldn't. So basically what you need to do is you need to be like in insert mode, and if you press I, it takes you into insert mode, right? So when it says insert, you can make changes here. Okay, and I'm going to say @user, and the password is going to be password. So these are the changes that we need to make in this file, and once you're done with the changes, you just press escape, and notice that the insert goes away. We're now out of the insert mode, and now if we type something, it's not going to type it, enter it. So in order to get out of here, you press :WQ, which means to write and to quit. Okay, so it's going to save the file and then close Vim editor. Okay, so now we are out of there, and what we want to do is now we want to migrate our database. Let's say PHP artisan migrate. Okay, so it's creating the migration in all the tables for our application. Excuse me. Okay. Now, okay, so it's all the same, but if I go to log in, it's going to give me an error, not found, but this route exists, right? So the problem right now, what is happening is that there is something called a rewrite mod, okay, and we need to to enable the Laravel style of routing, we need to override the we need to add like a directive in our Apache configuration that overrides all the rules for so let me just show you how it is done rather than telling you about it. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to essentially be able to, so like I have like created a a host in my host file, which is called sampleapp.local. Okay, so what I want to do is when I go to this path, okay, so I cannot like forward port 80. So essentially what's going to happen in your case, like if you're deploying a real application, okay, so when you go to this, like your domain, it should take you to the document root of your application, but since I cannot like forward port 80, so I have to put this, okay, so but in your case you won't have this, okay, so you'll just have your domain and it will go to the root of your application, right? So in order to accomplish that, we're going to create a site in our Apache configuration. So we'll go to cd etc apache 2 and sites available, right? And we're going to create a new site here. Okay, so this is the default site that exists. This is the default SSL site. So let's do this. So we're going to create a new file here and we'll call it sample site.conf. okay, and make sure to run the vim command with sudo, so because the owner of this folder is root and you cannot just do vim because it's not going to be allowed to make changes here. Okay, so that being said, let's go into insert mode. Okay, so we'll say virtual host, okay, and star 80. Okay, so this is going to be the server name is going to be the route or the domain that is going to be responding to this application, okay. And the document root is also important because this is where we provide the path to our application's public folder, context app Laravel. So I think it is context app Laravel, right? And /public. Okay, so this is our document root for this virtual host, and then this is the thing that is going to solve the the routing issue that we are getting here, that we cannot get to log in. Okay, so this and another thing. Okay, so just doing this won't work, but we need to do two things to get it to work. Okay, so we'll do var www html context app Laravel, and let's close this directory, and we need to add this allow override all. So basically this is what you need to do in order to get the Laravel routing to work. Virtual host, so let's close that, and this is it. So let's get out of here. We're going to press escape and WQ. Okay, so if you like do cat sample site.conf, so this is the file that we just created. Context app Laravel. Okay, so this is fine. Okay, so just by creating the file does not register, excuse me, does not register the site in Apache. So in order to do that, we need to run this command sudo a2 en site sample site.conf, right? And after we have done that, it registers it, but we need to restart Apache. Okay, so to do that, we can run a variety of commands, but I do it like this: sudo service apache 2 restart. and now we can just remove all of this, and it should take us to our application. Now if I go to login, it's still not going to work. Remember I told you that we need to do two things, right? So the other thing is, it's a simple thing, it's just a command. We need to enable a mod in Apache, which is, the command for that is sudo a2enmod, which is used to enable a module, and we'll say rewrite, right? So this is what we want to enable, and let's restart Apache again. Okay, so now that we have done all of those things, it's going to work, right? Okay, so let's make sure that the connection to our database is working. So I'm going to go back, go to register, and create a new user. So I'm going to enter my own name. Let's create a password. Okay, so we are logged in. Now registered. Now let's try and log in. Oh, I think I typed it too fast. Alright, so now we're logged in. We can create a new contact. John Doe, john@example.com. It should be at least 10 characters, huh? Okay, so create the user. We can edit it. Let's say that it's going to be this, and John, let's say Jane Doe. Okay. Yep, Jane Doe, and we can also delete it. So our application is working perfectly. Okay, and we can also log out. Okay, so I guess this is it for this video. Okay, and I hope you're going to find it useful, and please subscribe to my channel and like the video if you liked it, and if you have like any questions, leave them in the comments. There are a lot of things that can be done on top of it, but this is like a really useful thing, and it took me like a lot of researching to figure out how to do this, and we can do a lot more after this, and I'm going to be covering these sort of topics on my channel too. So if you have like a topic in mind that you are unclear about, and then you can let me know in the comments, and I will, if I know about it, I will try to create a video on it. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.